So I'm going to embarrass her and just do a little bit of an intro. She needs no introduction because if you are on the internet at all, you probably know her, read her, love her. Featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, Fast Company's 100 Most Creative People in Business, and one of Time's best blogs of 2012. And in addition to churning out all this like hilarious, witty, charming, compelling content daily, she also has written for Harper's Bazaar, New York Magazine, the New York Times, and she's written a book called Seeking Love, Finding Overalls, and it's out in September and you should buy it.
But don't read it.
But don't read it. Okay, well, so let's just start with, you're young. A lot of people who've been up on this stage are pretty young, but you've already done a lot. So how did you get started?
I started Man Repeller in 2010. I had been back from my semester abroad in Paris for about 2 months, and when I was abroad, I kept a blog there called 4 Months in Paris. That wasn't a fashion blog, it was sort of just chronicling my time away. And I was a journalism student in college, and so the new school I went to the new school. It has this policy that if you submit to publication and your work gets published, you get an A. So I was always submitting my writing to publications, and whenever it would get published, I found that it was so editorialized and edited ad nauseum and sort of lost all the quirk and humor and charm that I thought strung it together. So when I started this blog, 4 Months in Paris, I was like, this is great. I can write and nobody's editing me. I'm my own editor. I can say shit, curse at people. And when I got home, I was like, well, the 4 months are over, so I need to figure something out. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got as a writer was write what you know. So I was like, I'm gonna write about myself and I'm gonna write about fashion, duh. So a friend and I were at Topshop and we had been calling each other Man Repellers for months. And I was telling her that I wanted to start a blog and I was trying on these pants and she's like, you are such a Man Repeller. And I was like, oh, that's the blog. So I went home that night and I set up the URL. And I really wanted her to be my partner, but she had just taken a job at Women's Wear. And it was almost, within days, Refinery 29 had picked it up. Leia actually reached out to me in the first week when she was at New York Daily News.
Yeah, and my editor didn't want it, and I bet she's sorry now.
Her blogger name was like Stripper Pole.
It was Baby Stripper.
Baby Stripper.
Mm-hmm. It has a story, but it's not for this time or place.
So, yeah, I guess that's it. It was pretty seamless. I feel very lucky. I don't know that I did much.
You did do stuff before that, so tell me a little bit about, like, you know, you say you love fashion, but you worked in it for a while too,
yeah.
So you didn't like come out of nowhere.
Right. I was actually thinking about it yesterday that it's so interesting that I never worked at a magazine. I worked at a couple fashion startup e-publications between the time, well, I interned at Valentino from the time I was 17, so I was there for about 3 years. And then after that internship, I started freelancing for a couple e-publications. And I guess it was around that time that I was turned on to the whole idea of blogging. I think Sea of Shoes was the first blog I ever saw, and I was like, this is so interesting. This woman is just posting photos of herself and people are responding. And then I started Man Repeller shortly thereafter.
So what do you think it is that, I mean, I could tell you what I think it is, but I'm gonna ask you for now, that, you know, there are millions of blogs.
Your answer.
What? You prefer my answer? Well, I'll give you mine too, but there are so many blogs out there. Why do you think yours sticks? What do you do to make it resonate? How do you set yourself apart?
This is an interesting question and a unique question because I find myself asking this all the time. I'm asking myself this, and I think I've come to decide that I'm not afraid to ruffle feathers, and that's probably why it sticks. It's not only a fashion blog, it's kind of a culture site, and it definitely speaks to living in New York City. I think that it's as much about growing up in New York and being in New York as it is about fashion, which is very intertwined anyway. Those are two very enmeshed subjects. But I have a writing background, and I set out to start this blog that would, you know, when I started Man Repeller, I thought that it was going to be a resume for me, and that a year out of college, I would hopefully have a job because of Man Repeller. So it's really interesting that it became my job, and that's kind of why I took so many of the partnership opportunities that arose in the first year of inception. But I think, I guess my writing capabilities, or my writing, I don't want to say capabilities, I want to say that I learned how to write, so maybe that's why. I also don't take myself very seriously. I don't think anyone should take themselves very seriously. And I think that there's something very valuable about maintaining a position of an outsider in fashion that has been granted this access to the inside, but is only there to report for the people that are outside, like me. You know, that's a very important point of view that I try to maintain. Do I do it?
So you talked about not taking yourself too seriously. You really put yourself out there. I think for me, that's part of what makes you distinctive. You're not afraid to sort of like take the piss, like make fun of yourself. And when you do that and you get to be as popular as you are, there are bound to be haters, always going to be haters. So how do you take it? Like how do you manage to sort of keep your head up and like keep going when it just happens when you're, you know, when you rise to the top, people get jealous and...
Right. Well, I think the reason I'm not so affected by haters because God knows I have so many. I mean, if I want to find websites dedicated to how awful I am, I'm sure I can. But Man Repeller isn't about me. It never was about me. I have a very clear idea of what I want to convey and exactly what I want Man Repeller to be, which is this sort of safe haven for women to come and feel smart and special and powerful. And so as much as I use myself as the tool to convey that, the site isn't about me. So what keeps me going and doesn't allow me to feel deterred by the haters is that I know I'm doing something that is beneficial for other people. You know, I don't need a testimonial, but as much as someone might hate a story that I'm writing about city bikes or like David Foster Wallace's most recent book, you're gonna have an awesome conversation at dinner that night with some dude who's gonna be like, this girl knows her shit.
I just want to go back to, you said you took on like partnerships at the beginning, and I just wanted to ask about, you know, it is so hard to make a blog your job. We were talking about how few people are actually able to do that in sort of like this fashion world, but like in general, it's a sort of hard feat to pull off. You have to figure out ways to monetize. So, and you've done partnerships with Marc Jacobs, with Dior. So how do you, when tons of people are coming at you, how do you figure out this is right for me, this isn't? What have you learned along the way?
Well, I would say that in the last year, I don't ignore the partnership opportunities that come at me, but I'm much more inclined to pitch things to brands and let those partnerships execute themselves. Because what content consumers don't understand is that it's not that easy to create new compelling content every single day. And that the way that a journalist is supported by the magazine that they write for, a blogger is essentially supported by the sponsors that work with them. And so I will think of an idea, you know, in the subject of Dior, so Raf Simons' first ready-to-wear collection was launching in New York and LA, and I said this is a perfect time for me to sort of talk about the DNA that Raf is infusing into the Dior brand. So I pitched an idea to the VP of Communications at Dior. She loved the idea and we went forward with it. So I think something that a lot of the content consumers don't understand is that a lot of the partnerships or ideas that the websites come up with and pitch to you know, outband brands.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because like even I wouldn't have thought, like, you know, even as our site, we get approached all the time. And
it's very organic, and so that you're creating valuable content that you would be writing either way.
Right, that's perfect actually. So what is sort of like, I feel like there's been a lot of chatter. There was this Susie Menke's piece about the circus around fashion, and that were bloggers a part of that, were they not? About the future of personal style blogging. Where do you sort of, I know you wrote a response to that piece, but what do you see as like the future of sort of what you're doing? I know that you're writing a book. The site is more about culture. Like, so where do you see it going for you and just sort of in general?
Right. I think for me, I would hope that the site becomes, as previously mentioned, just this testament to the idea that women are awesome. You know, I really want to create this very comfortable space where women can come and stay for hours and get lost in content that is new, and not just from me, it's from different writers that have interesting opinions. And I want to continue celebrating female intellect. I think that's really what I'm about. And I guess in matters of other personal style blogs, I am so compelled to write a story called "Can We Just Shut Up About the Future of Blogging?"
Are you glad I asked that?
Well, yeah, I guess this is the outline for the story, but I don't know what's gonna happen. I think that personal style blogs are awesome. I think that it is so nice for a regular girl to see another regular girl styling something the way she likes. I think where things become a little difficult is when the personal style blogger starts accepting these gifts from these very fancy houses, and all of a sudden they're low budget, high editorial shoots.
Right, and it's maybe not their style.
Yeah, so I think that there needs to be a code of conduct and integrity implemented in the field of blogging, because it's never going to not exist. It's not going to go away. People aren't one day going to say, you know what, I'm going to shut off my computer and start only buying print again. That's not the way of fashion. Blogs are going to continue to exist. I think it's just a matter of Darwinism. The strong ones are going to survive. This is the way it is in fashion also. If you stick it out and you work hard enough, you will make it. And if you don't, you will do something else. And that's fine, but it is what it is.
Well, tell me, in your evolution, what are some of the struggles, the hurdles that you've come up against? How have you overcome them? What have you learned?
I would say about every 3 months, I fall into this like black hole of hating myself, where I'm like, I'm so stupid, none of this content is interesting, like I don't even want to read it, how could anyone else want to read it? Which my dad has identified as growing pains.
A 3-month cyclical growing pain.
So that was nice of him. But the most recent, I guess, debacle that I've come into is really that growing pain. Is that, you know, I'm building the team and I'm building out this site, and so sort of discerning that which is still my content versus that which is my writer's content is an interest. It's a very fine line, because this sort of combination of a personal style blog that is also something else, I don't know. It doesn't exist yet, and I don't know if I'm going to be the person to be able to make it exist. But yeah, I mentioned this in the Susie Menkes piece. This is a sweet time and a rough time for bloggers, period, because the trade is so new and it is being run by these fresh indwellers that don't really know what they're. You know, the only way to try things is by trial and error. You know, you do it and it works, or you do it and it doesn't work, and then you get back up and continue trying to do. So I guess I'm still in those rounds of trying and erring. Yeah. Throw and see if it sticks.
Yeah, just throw it against the fridge. Isn't that pasta, right? So in this time since you started the blog, what are some of the moments for you that have felt like the most satisfying or the most fun?
It was always a lot of fun. It's doing what you want to do and waking up every morning and being like, I'm going to find 27 pictures of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen because it's their 27th birthday and that's my market work for the day is awesome. That is irrefutably fun. But definitely sort of maintaining or earning the respect of industry heroes it sounds like such a humble brag, but it's really awesome. It really is humbling. You know, it's to hear that Jenna Lyons likes my style or reads my blog is just one of those holy shit moments, you know? So,
what's the worst part of your job?
The worst part of knowing that if I take a vacation for a week, the website doesn't exist. I can't, you know, it's...
Yeah.
I always say that I feel like Man Repeller is growing all these legs and running so fast, and I'm like trying to catch up in a wheelchair behind it. I'm like, stop!
I would like to go on vacation.
Yeah, and it's okay. I don't need to go on vacation.
What, you don't need to go on vacation?
Nah.
Oh, all right. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I have no idea. I just hope not dead.
Yeah, that would be horrible.
Like, I know.
I think it's like a little early, but I'd love to open it up to questions because she's squeezing us in, so yeah.
I think the first piece of advice I can give to, I guess, an aspiring fashion blogger is not to quit your day job. You know, start the blog and write about what you want to write about or show what you want, you know, because bloggers aren't necessarily writers. Some of them are stylists, some of them are curators of taste. So, sorry, curators.
Favorite word? Yeah.
So I would say keep your job. until you know that this is what you want to do wholeheartedly. And then when you leave that job, come at it with a business mind. You know what I mean? It really isn't a pastime. And I think that maybe it's the fault of, the first era of famous bloggers, that the assumption is that it's such a fun and cool and easy industry to tap into. But I can count on like 1.5 hands how many bloggers I know that can actually monetize and have been able to create these sustainable business plans.
Can you talk a little bit just about monetizing? Because I do think still there's this misconception that the people that you're referencing, the 5 bloggers who you see everywhere or whatever, that they just like appear places and it's so fun, and there's like that they just wear nice clothes and take pictures of themselves. So can you talk a little bit about like the business behind it a little bit, like how it is what do you have to do to actually make money doing it, and I guess like and what it actually is in terms, that it's not just like poof, you're a front row at a fashion show.
Well, yeah. I think it takes a lot of time and strategizing to be able to monetize meaningfully. I feel very lucky because I took every single opportunity that came at me in the first year. I was like, this is going to be a resume. I'm probably going to be fact checking in a year from now. So I'm just going to do whatever I can, because why not? I may as well create these relationships while I can. I'm going to let this be the vessel that helps me land a job once I graduate. And so I was really lucky that after I graduated and decided to pursue Man Repeller, it didn't really hinder the brand integrity. I think that in order to monetize, you have to understand the power of no. If you know exactly where you want the site to take you and what you want the site to be, you have to think about that goal with every single decision that you make. No exceptions. I mean, even in terms of the content that you're writing, if 5 years from now I wanted my site to be an homage to botany, I don't know why, I guess the flowers, I don't know.
I know, I was like, did you really just come up with that?
And I had this amazing idea to write about North by Northwest.
I was like, I'm glad we're incorporating the baby into this.
Oh. And it was the best story ever, and TMZ was leaking to me the baby's name. I would have to pass on writing that because of my commitment to botany. I'm sorry. Does that make? I'm sorry.
It makes sense.
Should I just leave? Drop the mic?
Nope. Not yet. I'm sure there are other questions, and I don't know. Maybe you could like get a plant angle in on Northwest, like something directional. Anyway.
Only it were red maple.
You said that in the first couple weeks of you blogging, Refinery29 picked up your blog. Was that something that you reached out to them, or was that something they just randomly found your site?
You know what? I think I had become, a lot of the junior contributors I was friends with from my previous internship. So I think that one of them probably caught wind of the site and brought it to the editor, which is, again, sort of demonstrates the power of social media. I think being active on all of those networks is so important, especially now that Instagram has video.
You're excited about that? We should talk a little bit about social media, because you're obviously on it. Yes. And like, how do you sort of see it as something that like helps your brand? How can it hurt? Where do people sort of slip up with using it? What's the right way to go about it, or what works for you?
I think what's unique about Man Repeller is that what helps me is probably also what hurts me, because this is basically this is from my mom's mouth. She started a Twitter account and an Instagram account, and she was like, I totally get why you have so many followers on there, because if you don't want to look at the site and read your long-ass articles, you can just go get these snippets on Twitter or look at the pictures on Instagram, and that's it. You cut out the middleman. So that obviously hurts me, because I want as many eyeballs on the site as will come, and I spend a lot of time writing those stories. But it also helps because it grows those networks, and they only get bigger, and so every time I'm tweeting out a link to the site, people are compelled to come see it. It's just very interesting to me when people come over to me and they're like, I'm obsessed with your Instagram. Do you do anything else?
Oh, no, you just Instagram.
Yeah.
Professional Instagrammer.
Yeah. I'm sure it's going to exist.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Your mic is coming to you.
Hello. What is your writing process like? I follow you on Instagram too. I think you're amazing. But I also do really like your articles. And do you make yourself at a certain time of day write, or is it kind of just like however?
Yeah, no, definitely not about time of day. It's essentially, whenever sometimes I will be in the bathroom in the morning and all of a sudden the first paragraph of an essay will come to me, and so
Do you
I
go
will
in there
run
with
to
your
my
phone?
computer and start writing. Or I put it in my phone, yeah, I've done that before. But I would say that I write my articles 2 to 3 days before publication and then edit them the morning they're going live. It's always good to put a pair of fresh eyes on them after you've written them. It also really helps to read books.
Yeah, so in that respect, like how do you you're working for yourself, it's a hard thing to do. How do you stay motivated and figure out new content?
I stay motivated because if I'm not working for myself, what am I doing? The only thing worse than being busy is being bored. So it's sort of a no-brainer. I've become my routine has become so ingrained in the person that I am. I can't even remember what I was like before Man Repeller. But in terms of creating new content, sometimes it's a struggle. It gets a little bit difficult every now and again, but for the most part, it's a matter of, reading what's in my daily I don't have Google Reader, but it's reading what's in my daily roster of, what's going on in the world. I definitely look at The Cut every day and The Daily Beast, and reading books.
Fashionista.
Duh. I thought I didn't even need to mention it.
Gonna make you do it.
I look at Jewel Mint.
Yeah, I'd look at Jewel Mint. Anyone else? Yeah.
As I have my own personal blog, and I was wondering, like, when you first look at a blog page, what are some of the key things you look at, like, to get your own stuff across? Because I feel like when I look at a blog, I look at it for 2 seconds, and I'm like, next.
Right. I really like clean design. I think that's definitely something, for a site to be inviting is a very important thing, to feel like, oh, I like this place, this is interesting, and I get it, and I'm around, you know what I mean? I think that helps a lot. To be honest, beautiful pictures definitely keep me sort of captivated as well. But I'm not really sure. I guess other than that, if those 2 things bring me in and they're the door, I need something to help me walk through it. You know what I mean? Which is either in the content or in the video. I love videos.
You liking this new Instagram feature?
I am.
Where do you see that going with the Man Repeller?
I have
What's
no
gonna
idea.
happen?
I have no idea.
Should we be scared?
Maybe.
Okay.
I pulled my neck this morning
Doing one?
doing a video. So I was I whip my hair back and forth. I whipped my hair back and forth, and I was like, I definitely just pulled a nerve.
Yep.
It's pretty bad.
Was it like this?
Yeah. It's bad. I just felt that in my ear when I did that right now. I should have done a follow-up video with like a neck brace on, but I couldn't find one.
Next week on the Man Repeller.
Yeah.
Did we drop the?
No, we didn't drop. I'm not Facebook.
Not Facebook. Okay. Anyone else?
Oh, nuts.
Have you faced any challenges being a woman in the fashion industry? And if so, how do you tackle those challenges?
No, I have not faced any challenges being a woman in fashion, which is a very lovely thing. I think it's very hard for someone that works, or not very hard, but it's strange for a woman that works in fashion to try and relate with Sheryl Sandberg, because it's an industry run predominantly by women, where women are appreciated and celebrated. This is sort of like the safe haven. But my husband said something so weird last night that made me want to stab him. He said something, what did he say?
What did he say?
I don't remember, but he said something like, she's like a girl. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm a girl. What are you talking about? I pay our rent.
Yeah.
But
well, so maybe not as a fashion person. It is true. It's like Sheryl Sandberg's come up a bunch today, but this is an industry where there are a lot of women, and it doesn't feel sort of the same way. You don't have to lean in the same way. But you're still sort of you're still a writer, and your site, as you've said, is all about being a safe place for women. So why do you feel that that's necessary? What for you makes it necessary that this site needs to be there?
Well, what's interesting is that I never felt these sort of distinguishing factors between being a boy or being a girl, only because growing up, my dad was always the feminist that my mom should have been. You know, my mom would be like, you should learn how to cook. And my dad's like, she is too smart for that. You know, it's like, the classic joke in the family that I think like a man, because I have 3 brothers and my dad's like, of course my daughter's the only one who actually has a job, you know? But I know that it is a problem that permeates every other industry. And for women to feel really powerful and really special is important, you know, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be taking the extreme measures that were wholly necessary 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. But these little nuanced differences, like having a site and saying that it is like a Jezebel site or Hairpin or Jane Pratt period, you know, these are little nuanced things that make being a woman that much more fun, and I just want to contribute to that.
Last question.
Hey,
Hi, Lauren.
And I love
I'm
funny
pretty
people.
sure no one here agrees with that.
No, no, you're not funny
they
at
were
all.
laughing.
But Leigh and I love funny fashion people, and you're so funny. Where'd you get your sense of humor? Is it from one of your parents? Is your family just like a bunch of hams?
Yeah, I would add to that. Fashion sometimes takes itself too seriously, you know what I mean? So it's, yeah, how do you stay funny in an industry that's so serious?
Fashion Week is a very hard week for me. I tread a very fine line between funny and wanting so badly to write like Vogue. You know what I mean? It's kind of awkward, but yes, my dad is hilarious. He's like the funniest human on the planet.
You should have him next time.
You should have him come here. He would probably be much better at talking about business, about my business, but he is not here.
No.
My
Next
grandmother's
time.
also really funny. I don't know if any of you saw that Mother's Day video, but yeah, she's good. She's a real pisser.
Okay, I think it was, last one. Okay.
This is just playing off of your question, because I've read an article where only like 18% of women make up the retail industry boards, CEO boards up in the industry. So it's still, in a way, very high up within the industry. So predominantly men that still run some of these industries. But it's still, yes, it is a safe haven for women. Does that change things in a way, or?
Does what change things? That
Well, even like
the upper echelons of the industry are still running
like
predominantly by
CEOs
men?
and the
Right.
CEOs are still predominantly men, even in the retail industry. Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to blame women for that, but I do know that typically in that, I guess in that field, which is still, it's the business of fashion. It's not really the creative leg, which is, you know, where the magazines come in and the sites come in and all that stuff. But I don't know if what I'm about to say might get me in trouble. But I do tend to feel like women sort of step in their own way in that respect. Is like, oh, like I could take this, like my aunt or my husband's aunt.
They're not leaning.
They're not leaning in, they're standing vertically. It's awful. But my aunt, or my husband's aunt, was working at Century 21, and she had a very high up position, and after she got married when she was around 35, she left because she wanted to have a family. And so I think that is definitely still a problem that exists in the industry. It's a little bit more flexible on the creative side because the hours are just different. You're not necessarily in an office from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. You're out on shoots, or someone is covering for you a day. Whereas that doesn't really happen, I guess, on the retail side of the industry. But I do definitely think that there's still a particle of women standing in their own way in that respect. So I don't know that I can speak to that.
Just a particle.
But it's just a particle.
Just a speck of dust, really.
I would totally let my husband bear the children if he could, and I'm sure that he would want it too. He'd be like, I'm way healthier than you are. You drink too much. Our babies are.
I'm looking at you, and I really don't think you're unfit. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Leandra's gonna go on vacation. Well, just for the weekend.
Yeah.
So thank you guys all so much.
Thanks.